Well, my name is Percy Nelson. I was born in Philadelphia, stayed in Philadelphia for 3 months. Then my mother took us to Ardmore, and I stayed out there until I was 10 years old and moved back to Philadelphia. And during the time in Ardmore, my father passed away, and he left my mother with six kids, 2 sets of twins, and two singles. And I went to school in Philadelphia, and when I went to vocational high school, I went to Dobbins Vocational High School, where I took up structural line work and electric welding. And when I was 17, I got a job at the Philadelphia Navy Yard as a electric welder. Now, some of this I'm gonna have to take off the paper here. I can't sort of keep it. I was working at the Philadelphia Navy Yard when I was drafted in the Navy, and I was inducted October the 20th, 1943. And I entered active service October 27th, 1943. 43? 43.
You entered service?
Yes, yes. In Philadelphia. I took my boot training at the Naval Air Station at Lakehurst, New Jersey. I started as a steward mate 3rd class. There we learned how to drill and how to serve commissioned officers and how to make them comfortable so they could perform their duties as officers. And the main duties were to train officers how to fly and land blimps. The base was divided in 2 parts, starboard and port side. I was on the starboard side, and we had liberty every other day. And the next day was like when we was on duty. The port side had liberty, and the men from Philly, we didn't have no transportation to get home when we were off. So what we did, we hitchhiked, and that's how we got back and forth. After a few months there, I was shipped to Shoemaker, California, then to Bremerton, Washington, then to the Puget Sound Navy Yard in the state of Washington. There I was transferred to the battleship USS New Mexico. There they gave us our duties as steward mates 3rd class, and they gave us our battle station, which was in the magazines where they kept the 5-inch 51 shells. And that was called a air defense station. Now, when you have like a air defense, it was a little different from general quarters. When they blow the bugle for air defense, that's like if attack was coming from the air. And general quarters was mostly like when attack was right there. And then they would sound the general quarter station. And they now in our battle station was where I was stationed. It was like in the magazine of the ship. There they kept 5-inch 51 shells, in which when the gunners needed the shells, we would have to send the shells up to them. And we was like about 2 decks below the water line, and which naturally, I was about 19 years old then, and you think about being under the water when you're going in a battle. That's was sort of scary, but that's what we had to do. When it was over, the bugle would sound, or general quarters had to go to our we had to go to our battle stations. Now, at first we were in the 7th Fleet under Vice Admiral Kincaid, which was in the Philippines, and at one time, General MacArthur went to President Roosevelt, and he wanted to have a fleet of his own. And Roosevelt issued him the 7th Fleet under Kincaid. Let's see. And the first battle we were in was at Lingayen Gulf. And there's where we were struck by the kamikaze or the suicide planes, sometimes they call them. And our ship was hit. The port bridge was just about blown to pieces. And we lost our captain, which was Captain Fleming. And when the ship was hit, I noticed the ship went down like this. And I told the fellows who was in there with me, I said, the ship is hit. And they did not want to believe it. They said, no, 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 no. But right after that, we got over the loudspeaker, ship hit, ship hit. And all the rooms on the ship are watertight, because if the ship gets hit here, then the water can't go from this compartment to the other compartment. So after the ship was hit, they secured general quarters, and we were able to come up. And all you could see was human flesh and blood, because a lot of the men were killed. A lot of the officers, plus our Captain Fleming was killed. So what they did, they we had a funeral, and they put the dead on a board and covered them with flags, and they tied 5-inch 51 shells to the legs, because after the funeral they would slide them into the water, and the 5-inch 51 shell would make them sink. And then we stayed aboard the ship, and I did my duties. But the ship had to be repaired, so it went to Pearl Harbor Navy Yard, and there I got a 4-hour pass. I was on that ship, I would say about 16 months, and I guess I got off about those 4 hours. And what we did then, after we got repaired, we went to Okinawa, but we took on a new captain, more crewmen, and Admiral Raymond A. Spruance, which I did a lot of reading about him, because we got the newspapers on their ship too. And I always thought he was was a great man. A lot of time we talk about certain people like Halsey was a very good admiral, but somehow I just give him the credit. And we left Pearl Harbor, and we became the flagship of the Fifth Fleet. And we met up with a British fleet, which one of the battleships was King George V, the one that helped sink the Bismarck. And we also had the battleship King George V and the carrier, British carrier Illustrious, and a lot of British ships, which was commanded by Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser. And our sister ships were the California and the West Virginia battleship. So we headed for Okinawa. Now, when we get the newspaper aboard the ship, and the newspaper would say, well, the Fifth Fleet is headed for Okinawa. But we had been there, I would say, about a week before it is announced in the newspaper. So this British Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser, he came aboard our ship and went through it with the captain. And I think it was Easter Sunday morning, we started bombarding Okinawa. And I think it was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marines had landed after we bombarded it. Then the general, Lieutenant General, I can't call his name, of the Marine Corps, he was killed there. And we was hit again by a kamikaze plane. But this time what they did, they fixed it right on the water, and they pulled up what they call floating dry docks and repaired it. So we stayed there until the war was over. They dropped the atomic bomb. And then what they did after that, they gave us leave. I'm sorry. Our ship went to Boston, and then they gave us leave, and I got a chance to come home. And when I came home, I wasn't feeling too good. It's the first time I ever felt like this. I felt like something was going to happen all the time. So my sister, she had just come out of college, and she had studied psychology, and my mother, she had taught psychology. And what they told me to do is to, when I get discharged, was to get a job and go to work right away. That would be the best thing for you to do. So the veterans could get their jobs back at the Philadelphia Navy Yard at the time. And what I did, I got out, I think it was the 8th of January, and the 9th of January, I went to work at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. And I stayed there for a while. Then I took a part-time job while I was down there, like on weekends, helping out in a construction company, and I got into carpenter work. And I stayed in that up until '90, when I retired from the Union. But the best thing for people to do when they come back, even if they come back from this war where we're fighting now, is to get themselves occupied into something, and to get their mind off of what they have been through with, because that's what saved me. Now, my speech is not long, but I would like to get back to the time we hit the first time. The seamen cleaned up what we had, and then we had the funeral and the burials, and then we went to Pearl Harbor, and then from there to Okinawa. Well, it's a short speech, ladies and gentlemen, but this is it.
If there are,
Thank you.
if there are any questions, would you please raise your hand? I'll bring the mic to you. Questions?
Mr. Nelson, when you were in those magazines, I recall I was a gunner's mate in the Navy, and
Yeah.
every once in a while we had to go down and take temperature readings in the magazines.
I see.
Well, the ammunition always gave off ether.
I see.
When you came up out of the magazine, you thought you were drunk. Did you
Yeah.
ever feel that way?
Well, we were so scared to death that so glad to be alive. That didn't bother me too much. But I have some pictures here of me when I was in the Navy. This is when I was 18 years old, right here. And I got a picture of Admiral Spruance. This is when he passed away. He was a very, very brilliant admiral. And
Put this up here and people can
see it.
see.
And I got a picture of my oldest brother. Of course, I look older here because my hair is my hair is almost white, and he dyes here. So during the war, he was in medical school in the Army ROTC. And when he got out, he had to do his time back. And he was a full doctor, and he went in as a full lieutenant, and he came out as a lieutenant commander back in the 50s. And this is my youngest son. He went to Abington High School, and I think it was Carter, the President Carter, got him a scholarship to Wharton School as a Naval ROTC student. And he went in as a ensign. Now he's out now working for General Electric as a senior financial analyst, and he also is a CPA.
Okay.
Yes. Now this is all my brothers and sisters here. This is my twin brother here, and this is my oldest sister, my next to the oldest sister, and this is my youngest sister, and these are the siblings here. These two here, this one here, and these they followed after their father. They are physicians. Then he has another son. That's the head physician in a hospital in the Virgin Islands. And this one here is my niece. This is my daughter. This is my niece. And these are my uncle grandchildren here.
Yeah. How often do you get together?
Well, we get together like some of them live in Florida. I go down there to see them, and I'm going to see my son Saturday. He's in Ohio, and this is my oldest boy here. He's a carpenter like I was.
I have a question on your duty station. You say your duty station in the magazine was 2 decks below the water line?
Yes, yeah.
How would you get those 5-inch shells up to the...
They had like a dumbwaiter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We would line up against the wall, take the shells and pass from one guy to the other guy. Then the guy would put them in the dumbwaiter. Like they may say they want 10 rounds or 20 rounds. We get 20 rounds and send them up to them.
What would a shell weigh?
I don't know what they weigh, but they were about that long. They were 5-inch 51s. 55 pounds. Yeah, I see. Okay.
Thank
all right.
you.
And we would put them on a dumbwaiter and send them up to the gunners.
When you were down below in the magazine, did you ever sweat enough to cover the deck?
I'll tell you what, we were soaking when we got out there. But you know what gets me though? I don't know if you all ever heard of a scuttlebutt.
Oh yeah.
Always getting something out, but nobody knows where it comes from. So they would tell us, scuttlebutt, to get the word around. Well, if the big guns get hit, we get a chance to go home. They can't fix those in Pearl Harbor. And we'd be sitting down there hoping that the big guns would get a little scratch or something on it. And being confined is the toughest thing in my life. I've always been used to getting up and going when I get ready to go. But you on a ship and you can't do nothing but your duties. Then it's mentally it's kind of rough on you.
I have another question for you. We invaded Okinawa on April the 1st, which happened to be Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday, that's right.
Did you make colored eggs for the crew? On the Tennessee, they served, when we secured from general quarters and opened our little lunch boxes that they delivered, there were 2 colored hard-boiled eggs. And I said, oh my God, it's Easter Sunday.
Yeah, there's one seaman had gotten killed. He was about my age. Name was Donovan Knight. Very nice young man. I hoped many a time that I would see some of his people, and I could tell them how good he was. Very, 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 very nice, nice young fella. He worked in the tailor shop. He would come up and talk to us, then we'd go down and talk to him once in a while. Yes, sir.
You must have some good inside stories of those officers you must have served on those decks. The inside stories of some of those officers you served with might be worth hearing about. And others, here you built your own house. Is that a true story?
I didn't quite get that one there.
I will get it. My corner.
You must have known dirty stories about the officers.
First of all, can you hear me now?
No. Them officers was pretty good. Except one time, when they go and watch, I was supposed to have hot coffee, toast, and marmalade for them. And when they came up, they all lined up to get their hot toast and marmalade and coffee. I was sound asleep. So they each lined up and gave me the devil, but they didn't do anything.
Percy, one more item.
Yes, sir.
Here you built your house and many others up in your area. Is that a true story?
Yes. I built about 8 houses up where I live at. See, I used to be a general contractor. And also I was a chief inspector for the FHA in Montgomery County. At one time, all houses that were sold, I either had to sign or either inspected. And I always loved my trade, except one time they sent me out to inspect some houses up in Harleyville. I seen all these motorcycles up there. I said, "Phew." I said, what is this? So I went up there and they had this big motorcycle gang doing the building. So I just looked at them and said, "Look, y'all sure doing a fine job here." And I got out of there quick. You know, I used to do lots of rehab houses in Philadelphia and some new houses. Does anybody know where 6 and Pine is in Philadelphia?
Oh, yeah.
On the southeast corner at the apartment building, I was the general superintendent on that job. And on the northeast corner, I was the carpenter subcontractor and the superintendent on that job. And then we built some two-story houses for the federal government. And also at 11th on the 11th and Lombard on the northeast corner, I built that building.
You've been a busy man.
Huh?
You have been a busy man.
Yes.
For you.
Yes. I loved it.
Have you ever worked with President Carter on the Habitat?
Once, just one time. But I tell you, 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, my wife passed away. Now you compare that with all what I went through with in the Pacific. The Pacific was like being on a picnic. See, that's a spousal loss is one of the worst things that can happen to you, which it has to happen.
A lot of us know. A lot of us have gone through that.
Yes. But the Navy took my son, educated him, and I appreciated that. I appreciated very much. Everything was good, but some things you just don't worry about and think about the good things. See?
That's right.
Well, I hate to call you all out here and stand up here for about half an hour and talk, but
It's very interesting.
this is about it right here.
There may be some questions coming up, but we'd like to thank Percy Nelson for his story, and if you think of some more little pieces of information, why maybe you can fill those in to us. I'd like to do a couple of things. I didn't realize it, but I had extra copies of our newsletter run off, and they were sitting upstairs in the office, so I have them down here now for those that didn't get the newsletter. Jesse Ritz also has prepared some United States code on the flag that some of you might be interested in, so that you know more about rules and regulations with respect to the U.S. flag. You're welcome to take them in the back. Let's see, what else is there? The donation kitty there would be very thankful if you have any extra folding change that you could dispose of. Ones are fine, 5s, 10s, and 20s are much better. The reason I mention that is that the library has had a serious funding cut when we got our new governor. One of the things to help balance the budget was to pull some of the money out of the library funds for all the libraries in the state, and it's made a significant impact on the library. They're trying to adjust to it. Obviously, one way of adjusting to it would be if somebody increased the contributions. And They have made a regulation that formerly nonprofit organizations could use the facility here for free, and they started charging them. Since we were initiated here under the support of the library, we have not been required to start paying a fee, but it seems to me we should obligate ourselves to pay, and so I think it's $50 a month that it seemed appropriate we should put in. So I'd like very much for us to see if we can't increase the amount of our donations. We've just about been covering our expenses so that we haven't been requiring the library to pay us anything, but we haven't been donating anything to them. Let's see, is there anything else that we should cover at this time? Next month's program is listed in the on page 2 of the newsletter. The USS French destroyer escort, Edward Lawrence of Burlington, New Jersey. Brandon is the one who has been doing this, Brandon Traster. He's gotten himself overly committed. He's got class coming up today, so he said he would be late getting here and he'd have to leave early, so I think he ended up not showing up. I might mention also we did have a nice kickoff to our Veterans in the Classroom project, and I have some copies of the folder in the back there that we passed out last Tuesday at the National Constitution Center. We would like to get copies of that to social studies or history teachers in any of the schools around the area here. We're initially trying to schedule veterans to speak in schools as part of their history lessons, and so the notice that we have back there has 6 of the speakers that were speakers last week are listed on the back. We want to get a similar kind of a description of other people who will be willing to speak in classrooms around the area here. So if any of you are veterans, and I know many of you are, or any of you have World War II experiences as a non-veteran, maybe we ought to start collecting those too, because that's important to know what the home front was doing.
How was it received by the children? The school, I would think the principals and teachers would love this kind of thing.
We would think that. We did send letters out to, I think, about a half a dozen schools. We sent them to the top administrator person, and we were very disappointed that we didn't get a thank you from anybody. We didn't get any response. So I think what we have to do is take it back through the students to the teachers to get it lined up. To a great extent, I think that they're saddled down with a lot of things they have to do, and they don't want to take on anything that they don't have to do. So learning World War II history takes a back seat, and we'd like to move that forward a little bit. So we need your help to get the schools to ask for our help.
Ada, I did quite a bit of showing movies that we took when we went to Africa and Egypt and all those places.
Hold it close.
When my husband and I were traveling together.
Start over.
Oh, let me stand up.
Yes, speak into the mic.
You do not get a lot of response from the schools when you do things, and I've done some lectures. Well, it must be this. Ah, gotcha. You don't get a lot of response from the school heads or the teachers when you lecture at the schools. You have to take a lot of equipment over and you get no help with it. You put it up, your lighting and everything. They feel that you should come in all prepared for that. And I've done quite a bit of it, lecturing, showing scenes of Africa when we traveled there, and Egypt, which of course is North Africa. But you don't say, there's no one to say goodbye when you leave. It's very cool and collected. I guess they've got their job to do. That's your job. Okay? That's how you find it.
We should invite Don.
We've tried having.
Don.
Want to come sit down for a bit? While
Sure.
Sheila has a response to that.
Sheila Martin is the project leader for this classroom project.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry that you had that kind of an experience. I've done a lot of outreach to schools in Bucks County, and we were very much appreciated, and every courtesy extended and so forth. So I don't know why Bucks County would be so welcoming and Montgomery County isn't, but we're still optimistic. And because it really is an important thing, and but my experience was much different than yours.
I'm sure each one is quite different. Jack, you've done quite a bit of talking in schools, haven't you?
Yeah.
How about just talking a little bit about it?
Just want to tell Sheila, as a Purple Heart group and our 101st group, we spoke to Maple Point School in Langhorne, and they had a wonderful program. Those kids had half the lawn painted with a big American flag, and they were in Channel 6. And they had 50 veterans there and introduced every one of us. I also talked to the kids in Lansdale. I forget the latter part of the name, but Penn something is their school. Yeah, that's it, Pendel, yeah. And every year they have a program, and I've been there for 2 or 3 years. George, you and your wife's been there. And also William Tennant School in Southampton, they had the Madrigal Singers, and when we were running the services for D-Day Memorial Services at Fort Dix, we had all those students over there. So I can't understand this, because every time there's a veterans holiday or something, we're called to come and talk to the kids. And the teachers and the police, when you talk to them, they said, boy, I wish these kids would pay attention like this in school. Because I don't know what we do, but they just sit there aghast, you know.
Lieutenant Central Bucks
Yeah.
West, Central Bucks East.
Right, yeah.
No, I don't understand.
But those kids are so anxious to learn, there's nothing presented to them. They just eat this stuff up. And hearing from the as you say, the horse's mouth, they really are eager to hear it.
It depends where you go.
She said it depends where you go. You're right. It depends on the administrator. It depends on the superintendent of schools. I'm a former teacher. I pulled teeth to teach some of the things that I taught. I taught the Holocaust for 35 years, and I had all kinds of problems teaching it. They didn't want me teaching it. And I will say, there's another problem, too. It all depends how the curriculum is set up, because you have a certain amount you have to cover. And a lot of teachers are really working hard to shove all that in to the kids before the end of the year. And if they're doing it from the beginning of the United States through the current period of time, that's an awful lot to cover in 1 year. And as a result, your World War II, it's at the end, near the end of the school year. So really, they're not so interested in hearing from you for Veterans Day or something like that. At the end of the year, well, yeah, sounds good, like a good idea, but oh my God, I got to get all this done. And so a lot of times it just goes by the wayside. I always managed to get World War II well covered, but that's because I was interested in it. And there's so much that's not getting covered in history. And today, as I said, it depends on the administrator, depends on how much they're interested in what's being taught. And it's really based on what individual teachers are going to cover based on this whole curriculum that they have to cover. So it's tough. I can see it from both sides. I know it's very difficult. Anybody else?
I'd like to cite a veterans program that I was privileged to see this, on Tuesday, the 11th, at the Robeson Elementary Center in Birdsboro. And each of us who attended, all veterans, received like a term paper, and with poems and compositions of fifth grade students about veterans and expressing appreciation for veterans, which was really superb. And I personally transmitted my comments to Principal Mr. William McKay and Miss Lisa Diefenbach, the music teacher, who organized the whole morning ceremony in the Chin Auditorium. But that was really a nifty program for elementary school and for all veterans. And it'd be certainly credible if we'd have a lot of programs like that. But I guess it hasn't always happened.
One other item that came to my mind, there's a person who has come to our lectures here by the name of Ed Root, R-O-O-T, and I received an email from him about a planned trip to Normandy this year, and he was planning on being out here this evening to give some information about it, but I received a note from him that he would not be able to make it due to other commitments, and that there's another man, I think his name is Kavanaugh, who is going to be there. They are also associated with a group that meets in Hatboro called the Civil War Roundtable. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. So if anybody is interested in a possible participating in a troop or a group trip to Normandy, let me have your name and I'll pass it on to him.
Stephen Ambrose family's having a trip on June 6th.
Stephen Ambrose is having a trip there also. There's probably many. So I don't know anything else that we need to cover. We might have a early dismissal today. If not, see you next month. Make sure you're reserved for next month.